Greetings! My name's Soozcat. I run the blog Confessions of a Laundry Faerie, and I thought I would give you a little update on I think it's like the 13th week now after my duodenal switch surgery, which took place August 2nd, 2018. Some stats. I think this may be the last time I do stats because I've had now a half dozen of these and getting stats each time. So I'm sure people are starting to get tired of them. My highest recorded weight was 270 pounds. My weight at surgery was 236 pounds, and as of my last official weigh-in, which was Monday, I am at 200.6 pounds. I am just under 5'4" in height. Some things that have happened. I have been gone so long because, as I mentioned in my last video, I needed to go out of state to take care of my mother. She had open heart surgery. As I was saying, there's few surgeries that are more serious unless you want to count brain surgery, so I was concerned. She responded very well to the surgery, for those who are interested. Her surgeon feels like the work they did to replace her valve was certainly life-saving, that it was actually worse than he anticipated. It was very well calcified, so now she has a new valve and it's working well. They also performed an ablation, which is why they did this particular procedure open heart rather than doing it in some less invasive way. So now she doesn't have the problem with the heart murmur that she's had most of her life. She says that she feels warm for the first time in a very long time. She's always had problems with her extremities getting cold, and even when everybody else in the house is feeling nice and toasty, she's the one who's been huddled in a blanket for some time. So if nothing else, this surgery has helped improve her circulation a lot. When I was there, I was very worried about my mom falling, because although I did get permission from my ARNP to leave the state and to travel for the sake of taking care of her, I did not get an okay when I left to pick up any significant amount of weight. You may recall that when I was done with my surgery, they told me no more than 5 pounds that I should be picking up. I was saying, my purse is 5 pounds. How am I supposed to do this? Somehow I got through it. It's funny what you do and you have to. But I was very concerned because my mother was a fall risk, and I was worried that she might possibly fall on my watch. As it turned out, the day that I left, she actually did have a fall. It was not a horrible one. She did have a minor scratch on her head, and as you're probably aware, head wounds always bleed profusely, so it was more scary looking than it was actually dangerous. But yeah, you don't want to see anybody, particularly someone who's recently had heart surgery, take a fall, and so I was very worried about that, but she's recuperated well. She has had to have some additional surgeries. These were, one was related to the heart surgery in the sense that she was not recuperating quite as well as the doctors wanted, so they did a revision surgery to make sure that she would be healed up as well as she could be. And then she had a completely unrelated surgery that has to do with her being on dialysis, but that's a whole different story. Suffice to say that I was gone for 4 weeks, and then when I returned, I had gotten out of the habit of making these videos, so I missed another 2 weeks of potential video making, so that's where I've been. 13 weeks. What is different? There are a number of things that are different, actually. I don't know if I look any different. I do feel different. I still have a long way to go. I mean, I, at this point, am still considered obese. And for anybody who hasn't had to lose a significant amount of weight and doesn't understand what it's like, imagine for a moment that you had lost from your all-time high 70 pounds, which is a lot of work to do, and you still were not considered even to be in the overweight category. Do you think you might possibly be a little discouraged by that? Because the answer to that question I have. The answer is yes, you would be. But I'm not terribly discouraged simply because I know that this is a slow process. It will take time. The weight took time to come on. It's going to take time to come off. That's just how it is. Plus, we just went through Halloween and I was saying, snack size stuff, yummy. That's not good for me. And everybody knows it's not good for me, and I did it anyway. So yeah, not the best choices. What other things am I noticing? I have noticed that since I have had surgery, we run out of food a lot slower. I've had to be kind of careful about what I buy at the store. I have to figure out whether or not it's going to last long enough. Particularly when it comes to highly perishable things like meat and poultry. I have to be careful about it. Kind of sit down and figure out, okay, how long is it going to take us to eat this? And if we can't do it in enough time, can I freeze it or otherwise preserve it so it doesn't go to waste? I've noticed that. I have noticed, as mentioned, that my rings are getting looser and that there are a few other outward signs that I've been losing weight. But I think the big one, the one that was kind of a psychological hit, for lack of a better word, was the other day when I was doing my little Laundry Faerie thing and folding up clothes, and I was folding up some of my husband's t-shirts, and just on a whim, I picked one up and looked at it and I thought, I wonder. And I tried it on and it fit me. And I guess for most people, that's not a big deal. You know, there are probably quite a few people out there who can put on their spouse's t-shirt and be absolutely swamped in it. And so the idea that a shirt that belongs to your spouse would actually fit you, that may not seem strange, but you need to understand that from the time I first met and started dating my husband until a few weeks ago, I have never weighed less than him. It was one of those things that scared me when we first started dating, because we went to a planetarium and they had an exhibit about what you would weigh on other planets. And I was afraid to get on the scale because I thought, if he sees how much I weigh and if he realizes I weigh more than he does, he might lose interest. He might not want to date me anymore. That scared me. And fortunately, it did not scare him off, so that's good, because he's made of strong stuff, that man. But it was something that scared me, and things just got worse. I mean, I wasn't 270 when I met him, but I got to be that way after our marriage. And I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. Because if you have never been significantly overweight, if you've always been pretty much height-weight proportionate throughout your life, you may not really understand what it's like certainly in the United States and probably in other countries as well, to be a woman who is not height-weight proportionate and what that does to your psyche. I'm still not considered to be height-weight proportionate, by the way, so this still applies even though I have lost a significant amount of weight. But I'm trying to think about how to address this, and maybe the best analogy I could come up with is if you've ever stood underneath a waterfall. We're not talking about something like Niagara Falls, but we're talking about a waterfall that's large enough that you're feeling the weight of the water coming down on you. You're feeling the cold. You're feeling the wet. It's very hard to ignore that as a force of nature. You may sit under the waterfall and decide to yourself, I'm going to resist all the feelings that I feel while I'm sitting under this, but it's going to take its toll on you because it's something that's nearly impossible to ignore. And I would say that being a significantly overweight woman in the United States, the social pressures that come to bear on an overweight to obese woman are in some ways very similar to that waterfall coming down on you. You can tell yourself that you're going to ignore the things that people say, even when they're family members, and they say well-meaning things like, "You're so pretty, you could be really beautiful if you just lost 20 pounds." When you have total strangers treat you in a way that seems weirdly awkward, and you're not sure why they don't seem to connect with you until you suddenly realize that all of their friends are skinny ladies, and you're not a skinny lady. That might be the reason why they don't want to associate with you. When you go into a store and the cute clothes stop at size 14, and you can't find the same clothes in larger sizes. All of a sudden they're in funny colors and in strange polyester combinations, and they're not very well made and they fall apart, but they're charging the same price. Just all these little slings and arrows that you go through that make it very difficult to feel not just feminine, but sometimes human. It's hard. I'm not going to say that it isn't. And for those folks who are going through the experience of bariatric surgery because they've tried everything else, this is why they do it. It's not just because they want to lose the weight for their health. It's because they get tired of the waterfall. And I don't think if you've never experienced it, it's hard to understand, but it is a constant onslaught. Ways both subtle and blatant that your culture tells you you don't deserve to be treated the same way that height-weight proportional women are treated. You don't deserve even to get the kind of treatment you need if you're diabetic, because clearly you brought this on yourself by overeating. Never mind that diabetes is partially a genetic disease, but let's not get into that. That's a whole different kettle of fish. There's all kinds of ways that women who are not height-weight proportionate get mistreated. Now, it's possible to be very well put together, to look and to act and to feel very feminine, even if you are not at the perfect size, whatever that happens to be this week. I have a sister who is gorgeously put together, and she weighs more than I do. However, she's in better shape than I am. She has a personal trainer. She goes to the gym on the regular. She tries to take good care of her body. She does her makeup flawlessly. She knows all the places that you can go, both online and locally, to get fantastic fashion for women who are over, say, a size 18. And she looks gorgeously put together. But I have to tell you, she makes a concerted effort to do that. It's not something that comes easily. And it does require a lot of her time and a lot of her attention. And frankly, I'm lazy. This is one of the reasons why I wear so little makeup. It's not because I can't do makeup, although I'm not great at it. It's because I'm lazy. But it also has to do something with the idea that, oh, you're not that feminine, you're a fat lady. Now, I know that that's a false dichotomy. You can be fat and also be very good looking. There are plenty of people I could cite. But it is one of those things where our society does make us feel less than in many ways. And it's not just fat people. There's a lot of people out there who are made to feel less than. I know we're not special in that sense. But it is interesting to see how people respond to me as I lose the weight. I have noticed that although I think I've pretty much stayed the same, I'm generally friendly with the people that I come in contact with, even if they're just people I'm going to talk to for 30 seconds. I try to be friendly and outgoing. But I've noticed that clerks who have seen me for a long time, people who have helped check out at the Safeway or any one of a number of other places that I go, have started returning my smiles when I talk to them. They're more animated, they're more interested. They treat me differently, and I'm noticing it, and I'm thinking, I'm the same person I used to be, I just weigh a little less. but it's rather eye-opening to see what the differences are. Anyway, just something to think about for this week. Again, my name's Soozcat. I run the blog Confessions of a Laundry Fairy, which can be found at laundryfaerie.blogspot.com. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you would like to give me advice, any of those things, please comment below. I'll be happy to respond. We don't have Roxy as our special guest star this week. She has been hanging out, sitting on the back of the chair just beyond our ability to see in this video. But thanks to the Roxy cat for not deciding to photobomb this particular session. And thanks again to Captain Midnight, my handsome and talented husband, for being my cinematographer and general all-around stand-up guy. So that's all for this week. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.